Dear friends, we're about to start our session, which is to cover a quite broad set of issues concerning both the developments within the European Union and in Ukraine in what concerns providing reforms and bringing Ukraine closer to Europe. We have several distinguished speakers. We have a limited time, unfortunately. That is why I will be following and try to keep you inside the time framework. I think we have several reports. I would call them like that. And my suggestion is to organize our work as follows: that after each report there will be a short question and answer session, and since I am not very much familiar with the specific topics, I think that there will be some interventions into neighboring issues. Let's keep the discussion alive, and you all are welcome to participate. And now I give the floor to our first speaker, who is Maria Ivanova. She is the chair of the Parliamentary Committee on European integration of Ukraine. The floor is yours. I'm not sure about the language. How many of you don't understand Ukrainian? So there will be four. I think that the translation will be needed.
Oh, do not do it for me. If you speak slowly, I will understand.
But still we have three people more who will need translation. So, Maria, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. It's telling the truth, I can't speak English, and unfortunately my speech, I was not informed that it's possible to have a speech in English. That is why I don't want, to switch myself to incorrect English. That is why, sorry, but I will speak a little bit, Ukrainian, but at the end I will speak English because some parts I need to, my English will not be good. So sorry, and I would like to say that as a acting chair of the Committee on European Integration, of course, I would like to congratulate everyone in our country with the agreement which have been entering in force. And I would like to say from the 1st of September 2017, and of course we had many skeptical people who didn't believe and who resisted not to make it true, and we have heard a lot of manipulation that it will not be ratified, but now this agreement is a part of a legislation of European Union. So that is why I would like to say a few words about the agreement, about our cooperation with the government, and our work in the Parliament, in the committee, and of course the problems, but anyway, achievements also. Тоді перепрошую, прошу мені допомогти, тому що все ж таки угода про асоціацію – це є такий важливий величезний документ, який десятиріччями напрацьовувався, і якщо хтось думає, що це може робота останніх всього 3 років, це неправда. Дійсно, це вже 10 років наші дипломати і наші політики дуже пильно над цим працювали.
So the association agreement between the European Union and Ukraine is the fundamental document, and the work on it has been conducted not only for 3 last years, but for 10 years. It was very hard work of all our diplomats and so on.
Я хочу сказати, що 2140 сторінок – це дійсно той текст, тобто це включаючи і додатки, і протоколи, і спільну декларацію, говорить про те, що дійсно цей документ є абсолютно безпрецедентним як з точки зору масштабів, так в принципі і самої деталізації.
A document comprises 2,140 pages, and it also has several annexes, declarations, and it is a quite unique document.
Тобто є поглиблення як політичної, так і економічної, тобто відносин саме між Україною і Європейським Союзом.
The aim of this document is to strengthen both political and economic relations between Ukraine and the European Union.
Але наше завдання, спільне завдання, це, звичайно, створення дуже вдосконаленої інституційної саме структури, а також наближення законодавства.
But our task is the creation of the institutional structure and creation of similar legislation of Ukraine and the European Union.
Я би хотіла зосередитись на тому, okay, I will try to say in English, that now we are working on the single institutional mechanism we are working out, and that is why together I think that this is the first time in the history of Ukraine we're working together with the government and parliament. Unfortunately, we still didn't adopt it on the legislation level as this draft bill is still we need consultations and improvements, but I would like to say that that we are trying to also to change our rules and procedures in the parliament and to make our committee more competent because as you know, it is really very hard to work as on the 12th of September in the parliament there were registered more than 10,000 draft bills. And we still do not have 10,000. And if you will analyze other national parliaments or even European Parliament, it's not such a high quantity, but I would like to say that we unfortunately still do not have a special expertise for the draft bills according to EU legislation. And as you know, 2 years ago we had a special mission of President of European Parliament, Mr. Cox, who has made recommendations. And still we have problems with the implementation of these recommendations. But anyway, we really need regarding this institutional mechanism, we would like to include that on the governmental level, it has to be a creation of such state institutions as such a structure which will make monitoring, which will the center of translation and terminology, and of course such institution which will provide coordination between all the structures between the ministers and between the committees of the parliament, as unfortunately if we will take from 130 directives of the association agreement, we have implemented only more than 30. That is why we really need this mechanism, and I think that the speed will be much faster. But as you know, the first steps have been made. The Vice Prime Minister on European and Euro-Atlantic integration, Ivanova, was nominated. And you know that we have in each ministry Deputy Minister on European integration, which we are working really very close together. And of course, in the Secretariat of Cabinet of Ministers, the Office on European Integration is working, and we are also cooperating with them. But anyway, we have to work on the model of functioning of this institutional mechanism, and we are now working on the experience of Croatia. As unfortunately we still do not have this procedure when we are adopting some EU obligations on the level of the Parliament, we don't have this Hedgecock procedure, and we don't have this like sign that this is EU, this is agreement, association agreement, and we need it to make as soon as possible. Also, I would like to say that association agreement, we need to implement more than 350 directives of EU of the whole agreement, but we have a plan which I have mentioned, 130 for the last year, and we didn't do this. But I would like to say now about our committee that we have such a, how to say, manual regime, as we are trying to provide joint committees on the very problematic issues. And the main, like we have now the priority of 40 draft bills in our agenda, and we have written already a few letters to the speaker, to the leaders of faction, that this is important and we have to make it as soon as we can. And the problem is we have now the majority of the problems in customs and tax committee, and also in the transport committee. So we will have our joint committees, and I hope that we will deal with all the difficulties, especially after the second reading. We have a lot of amendments, and sometimes these amendments on the final version it is not possible to adopt, as it's not according to European legislation, and you know such examples which we had on energy market bill and energy efficiency and also ecology. So what I would like to say that is we know our task together with the government. We also know our obligation and our task inside the parliament, and I really hope that this new parliamentary session and this new political season, if it is possible to say, that our politicians will be more responsible for the obligations. And I will tell you some example regarding, you know, our obligation in a World Trade Organization and such very scandal issue on the wood ban. But this is not only a problem of how to say, our country. Yes, this is a problem of our strategies inside our governmental structures, as we think that it has to be a strategy of лісове господарство, wood, forest industry, and then we can speak more detail about wood ban, because unfortunately we still do not have a policy in each ministry which we are asking to do, and to have a strategy, as now it's more chaotic, if I can allow to say. And also a problem of that legislation which have been already registered according to association agreement, that this draft bills, they were registered by MPs, and as you know, association agreement, all the draft bills has to be initiative of the government, and that is why sometimes we pay more time for this discussion, and that is why the speed is of adopting this legislation is also not very good. But another problem is implementation and підзаконні акти. Підзаконні акти. Bylaws, yeah, thank you. Bylaws in the government. So we will also now discuss, we will have a discussion, and we, together with the Vice Prime Minister, we have planned to have a separate such a meeting with the ministers on to have analyzed the implementation, these bylaws after that bills which we have already adopted. I would like to say that, of course, we have in the Parliament sometimes very loud discussion and very hot discussions. But I would like to say that anyway, for these 3 years, we are moving forward. We hear each other, sometimes not very well, but anyway, I think that we realize our obligations, we realize support of our international friends, we realize that association agreement, it's a plan of reforms, and this is a roadmap which we have to implement. I really just wish that all the politicians has to think not only about new elections, but they have to think about really state interest, as now the question is if we will have our country together or not. And that is why I think that association agreement, it's a real instrument for each responsible politician to, not only by words, but also by voting and by very intensive participation in discussions to improve or to say that he is a real Ukrainian politician, not like of other interests or not other countries. Thank you, and I will be ready to answer your questions. Telling the truth, probably I will not tell you more detail about the problems, so I will be ready to answer.
That was great, and actually we saved a host of time because of no necessity for translation. That's why actually I didn't interrupt you. Now, if any of you have any immediate questions for Maria, you're welcome to ask. We are aiming at bringing discussion closer to the students who are present here, so don't feel shy, and if you have any immediate comments or reactions, go ahead. Okay, then you're welcome.
May I have, please, a very strange question to Mrs. Smirnova. Maria, if this cup would be half full with water, half empty, how would you translate it to the audience? How would you characterize the cup? Would you say it's half full, or would you say that it's half empty?
It's half empty.
Thank you.
That looks like that was
We'll come back to it.
A kind of test.
Come back to it.
So as you see, strange questions are also welcome. And now, actually, I was going to pass the floor to you, to Mr. Janusz Zakoni, who's there is a question? Okay, in a minute. Go ahead.
Dear Ms. Smirnova, I wanted to ask about this new institutional mechanism for communication between Parliament and the government. What is the main problem about communication or cooperation between government and Parliament at the moment? Is it political issues, or it is just institutional bureaucracy problems, or what has to be improved?
I will also tell you, thank you for your question, I will also tell you such an example. And you will, I mean, I think that everyone understands that this is a political problem, that we even are not able, during our meeting between leaders of faction and the heads of the committees, you know, on Monday usually we have such a meeting before the plenary session, we are not able even to start the speeches from the heads of the committees, not from the heads of the political factions. Because unfortunately, we even are absolutely ready, you know, not to be with TV. Because we have to communicate with the leaders of the faction, they have to hear the heads of the committees and the problem issues of the draft bills. But unfortunately, at the very beginning, we hear only like statements, and they leave the audience and they go to the press, and then again, the heads of the committees, like, you know, by themselves, I mean, with the speaker. But this is, I think, still, of course, a political problem, that sometimes they don't want to have even this discussion. And that is why that was our proposition as a committee, you know, that unfortunately European Integration Committee, we don't have any competence to block some bills, or even what we are trying now to do and what we are trying to change in the rules and procedures, that if this draft bill is not according to EU legislation, it shouldn't be even registered. Then we will not have this 10,000 draft bills. And, but again, this is a political will of the leaders of the faction. I understand that, how to say, probably this situation is in favor not only for opposition, different opposition. Sometimes probably, I don't know, really for me, I'm sometimes also in opposition. Probably not sometimes even. But unfortunately, even we also, what we are trying to change inside, even if it is a presentation of a bill, that at least a word of the committee in favor or not in favor of such draft bills, or some like advantages or disadvantages, we have to have this voice during in the parliament during session. And then, you know, it will be personal responsibility of each MP, or will they vote or not. So we even do not have this procedure. So, but I really hope for the government now, and we had a meeting with the coalition, that we have to change all these rules, because I mean, the time, we don't have time. Really, we don't have time, and we need economy. We will have a strong economy when we will adopt EU legislation according to association agreement, because we need transparency. We need all these rules and procedures, and I think it will be much easier to go forward. We understand who is the enemy, and we understand who, I mean, the resistance. But unfortunately, some politicians are helping to such process. After the meeting in the Cabinet of Ministers, or also special meeting with the Prime Minister, with the Vice Prime Minister, I think that they also have this understanding, bless you. So that is why, as I mentioned, I really hope that the spirit will be changed.
Judging by an extended version of the answer, you have posed a very targeted question. I would also take a comment from His Excellency Ambassador of Belgium to Ukraine, and then I think the last question for Maria for this time, and then we'll proceed with the next speech.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor, because indeed I do not have prepared reports for this session, but I thought my role more interesting in commenting or maybe in asking questions. And on what Mrs. Ionova just has said, I can only encourage her and commend her for the steps that she is the driving force behind in terms of indeed getting these parliamentary procedures right, because as we as diplomatic observers, as we see it, we see indeed a problem in the parliament. You may have a policy, you may have obligations arising from the association agreement that are embedded in policy, in draft bills and so on, but then it is striking to see that even if a government is the emanation of a coalition, a majority in parliament, that the parliament does not seem to be able to get these draft bills through, and they are absolutely needed, and they are indeed the basis of the homework that is to be done in making the association agreement work. So I'm very interested and encouraged. I feel encouraged by what you say about this institutional mechanism that is being put in place, and indeed the political games that are played. We are not so naive that we would not see them happen. So, and we judge them on their value as well. An interesting parallel I would like to draw here with Belgium is the following: do not, if it can be an encouragement, I mean, Ukraine now indeed has to go through a lot of legislative work in adopting the European acquis. But be sure that member states do have the same obligation, and do also know, because directives are European law, but as you know, they have to be transposed into national legislation, and do know that it is quite a headache in Belgium. Belgium, the champion of the European project, but we are somewhere down the list in terms of our rate of implementation of European directives. It is not that we do not want to implement European law, but we have, in our case, it is maybe more an institutional problem, because we are a federal state, and we, for the biggest number of European directives, we have about 6 parliaments that have to ratify them in order for a directive to be completely transposed. So it is an institutional problem, but also in my country it has forced the political class and the polity to adopt rules of procedure, to adopt a mechanism that allows us to implement much more fluently than we were used to in the past. So your problem, you are not unique in having this problem, but you are surrounded by other countries that know what we are talking about, and that can only encourage you to go further on that path and to make politicians responsible indeed for the obligations that their country has taken, and to adapt your institutions. Thanks.
Yeah, just a few words. As I would like to use this opportunity, as here is also Deputy Minister on European Integration, one of the ministers, I would like to say that regarding political will, that really we have a lot of discussions and conversation in the committee with our Deputy Ministers on European integration. And believe me, we don't have any, I mean, in majority, we don't have any problems in discussion when we are discussing any like draft bills and so on. But that is why we need this institutional mechanism, which will make this procedure between the government and between parliament much easier. And that is why we are trying to, because we have to change this on a legislative level. So we have to adopt this bill on this institutional mechanism, because in other countries, all the draft bills according to association agreement were only in one reading, And we have to, if it will be assigned that it's obligation on the cessation agreement, we have to adopt this bill as the whole. So I think that it will be much easier for us, together with the government, to work and to go forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We also have an institutional mechanism here, as I promised. Your question. Well, welcome.
What drives the political will to maintain the status quo?
I would like here to say about our civil society, probably, because telling the truth, non-governmental organizations, civil society, is really helping us to move forward some problematic issues. And that is why I think that it is absolutely possible to break this wall, if I can say, because it's really, now it's not very sick. Now it's sin, so it is possible to break. But in each sphere, we have interested sides. Yes, people who are in favor and people who are not in favor, and sometimes it is also non-governmental organization. I will tell you that I have this problem in the sphere of intellectual property. And but here we are together on the same, on the same front line together with the government. So, and I hope it will be much easier. Sometimes the battlefield is, the actors are changing. But anyway, I think that now for me, it's much easier when everything is really very public and transparent. For me, public discussion is, even if it is sometimes very, if I can say, scandal, it's much better than, sometimes behind the skin. That is why this is my weapon, if I can say, like transparency and discussions. So I think that if we will have more discussions, if we will have more results after such hot even discussions, it will be much easier to work and to cooperate in the future.
Thanks, Maria, for your reactions. I think everything was excellent. And now I'm passing the floor to Janusz, as I promised, who is the head of the European Union's very well-known project association for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to talk to the microphone nearly, because in the first part of the session I was sitting up there, and it has been terribly annoying that I have seen nice people talking, but I did not hear them. That's why I'm trying to eat this microphone here now. Thank you very much for the invitation. I am the team leader of a very interesting new type of European Union project, which is called Association for You, meaning you there, and Ukraine. And why is this project interesting? Because the EU delegation and the EU Commission themselves agreed or themselves planned totally new solutions which have not been around in the methodology of the EU assistance to any country before. And before I try to tell some words shortly about this thing, I have here a document, and this is especially exciting for young people, including me. This is a joint staff working document of the European Commission, which you can download from the internet, and it is talking about the 20 main deliverables for 2020 of the Eastern Partnership. Why is this document interesting for me, because instead of generic talk, instead of high-flying nice words, it says very clearly what the Eastern Partnership has to achieve, and many times in terms of quantity, and not only general nice ideas. I mention this because the title of this conference, Problems and Prospects of the EU-Ukraine cooperation, is a very interesting one, because everybody can put down the coin on the table. Which of these words are more important for me as a person? And I would like to tell you that as an EU team leader, I am paid to solve the problems. I am paid to implement the tasks in my project plan. And this is what we are trying to do. But without the prospects, it's very difficult to do. So that's why you see, Maria, this tricky question, empty or full, and I think you as politician answered as you have to answer, because if I were a politician in Ukraine, I would have a lot of questions in my mind. On the other hand, I believe that the prospects are huge in this country, and I'm saying this to the young generation: do not want to go away or come back very soon, because this country is improving. My colleagues sometimes used to tell me that, Janos, you are too pessimistic. I always say, no, I am realistic. But you see, you have to have perspective. We have to believe that things are improving. And by the way, the second message I would like to make is that things are improving. And let me refer to what Maria mentioned from her perspective. Creation of such a structure that monitors the implementation of the association agreement. Such a basic structure like the Governmental Office of European Integration plus the Vice Prime Minister are existing. Of course, we and they together should work better, but it is exactly now that such a progress is ongoing, and I know, or I was informed, that very soon a new monitoring system and a new governmental action plan will be probably criticized and then accepted by the government to make the picture clearer about the implementation. And probably when the cup is half empty, then probably to say who should have filled in the water, because that is a basic component of that transparency that you were talking about. Now, you mentioned the Center of Translation and Terminology. Let me tell you that it was my project who has now 50 people, 50 so-called fellows in our translation unit, which is working together with the Governmental Office for European Integration. Yes, we have a huge amount of problems. Yes, there are a lot of unsolved questions, but tens, about 50, 60 not translated pieces of legislation have been translated. The ministries are turning to this unit and they are working. So this first step, or kind of very strong step, has been made on the translation front. If you, Mrs. Smirnova, would ask me, yes, but what will happen in 2019? Because our project will finish its activities, or must finish, at the end of 2018, then I would be in trouble to answer. And actually, it is not me, but the government who should, how to say nicely, plan capacity building and design such projects not for 2 years or 3 years, but for much more, because the perspective of solving these problems is much longer. Then you mentioned the coordination and some other issues, and mostly the lack of policy analysis, policy development, and strategy. And I think you are absolutely right. But I have to add that in September now, it will be started a huge governmental reform, in the framework of which, as far as I know, I don't want to eat your bread, Mikola, but as far as I know, some 800 people will be taken to the different priority ministries with a salary which is 4 times more than what people are getting today, meaning we will have quality people, we will have more motivated people, we will have actually people who will be able to elaborate and implement those policies and strategies which are lacking today. How to say nicely, I'm not over-optimistic at all. But I want to see a kind of balance, and not only because our project is paid to achieve results. We have to show what we have been doing, and there are a lot of results in this field. And one of the most interesting results is, which makes our project very unique, is the following. Wherever I am going, I'm meeting a lot of nice young people who are greeting me, and I sometimes do not know who they are, but I know that I know them. Why? Because we have about 150 colleagues called fellows who have been taken on board by our project. Their work is paid by our project, but they are working for different ministries and the government itself. It is about 30 fellows working for the government. How to say, some of them at their level of being junior expert, and many of them are working very high level as senior experts promoting the governmental work. Of course, I do not say that this will be the long future. It should not be. The future should be specifically trained governmental experts who know their work and are motivated to do the job independently from the politics. But at this very moment, this has been a huge, or is regarded to be a huge support to the governmental bodies. And I would like to complete with 3 sentences or 3 topics, which I believe would be very important to have a strong opinion about, are the following issues. Capacities. We are talking a lot about capacity building. We are talking a lot about training. But then when this would be implemented, I am advised that, yeah, you can make training to all people in a certain ministry on Saturday, Sunday, or at night, which is not all right. Self-development, training, and such things belong to the work, belong to the everyday work. Otherwise, we are only talking about capacity building and things and not doing it seriously. And I believe that capacity building is a huge need in many segments of the governmental, maybe even the parliamentarian mechanism, and it should be taken very, very seriously. The next and probably last issue I want to mention is the resources. Sometimes with Andre here and with my other colleague, we talked about some issues before the session, and we said that in some issues we should go back to the basics in our thinking in this country. Because we have wonderful aims, we have wonderful books, wonderful articles, wonderful speeches, and all these must be implemented by 12 o'clock tomorrow without money, without resources. I do not accept any plan which doesn't have resources attached to it, appropriate resources. Otherwise, we all stay on the level of nice general talk, and very few will move or may move forward. The planning and the methodology of planning should be a most important issue, and we are actually dealing with, in our training, the impact assessment issues and many others. So, completing what I want to say is, from the problems and prospects, I agree with the problems, but I would very strongly emphasize the prospects and the actual to-dos, not tomorrow morning, this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Janos. And I have a really tough task of choosing between either limiting our speakers or skipping or at least transferring parts of the questions to the final, closer to the final part of our meeting. But we have an immediate reaction from Maria, as far as I understand. So I will let her speak, and then we'll proceed.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask you and to say that unfortunately, as a parliamentarian, I am not able now to use this monitoring Skúka, and I'm not also able to use the translation. I mean, we as a committee are sending, I can tell you, every day we are sending to the government our letters to have expertise, to have translation, and to have their comments. And Mykola knows that sometimes even during our committee, we have 2 or 3 different expertise and points from the government. I mean, this is a practice and this is a reality. And unfortunately, this monitoring system has had to work in 2016. I hope it will work till 2017, and I know that was an announcement. The problem, as I know also, that who will approve by the government this? I mean, this translation will be approved by the government. Because, yes? Okay. Certified, okay. Okay, because we just didn't have the answer on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, now Mykola Movchan is welcome to join the discussion, who is the Deputy Minister of Youth and Sport of Ukraine.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Maria Ivanova. We have really very good, and all colleagues here, we have really very good cooperation with our Committee for European Integration of the Parliament, and we report to the committee and very often, and we have very good working contacts to all our colleagues from the Parliament, and we are happy of it because, in our opinion, it's very important to have such connection. Government, ministries, and the Parliament, we exchange opinions, we report about our work, we ask for help, and thank you very much for such a help. And also would like to admit about our good cooperation with Mr. Zacconi and the Association for You project. It's for us, it's a very important project because the expertise of the project, personal expertise of Mr. Zacconi and the whole project are very important for all our institutions, not only for the Ministry of Youth and Sports. With your permission, I will say some words about our cooperation with the European Union and the European Union member countries in the field of youth and sport, and about youth and sports diplomacy. And our achievements and our prospects, because it's, as you know, you remember that many speakers today told and addressed young people, and with different questions and with different pointing out that you are really the future and you are people who push our country forward, and will do it in future. And our ministry, Mr. Zhdanov, and other colleagues, we pay lots of attention to cooperation with young people, with NGOs, and we work directly with European Union member countries on bilateral level, and also directly with the European Commission and with EU Commissioner Mr. Navracic and his office. You know that when we talk about youth cooperation with the European Union, it's First of all, it's program Erasmus Plus for youth. There is there's a special program for NGOs, for non-governmental organizations, and we are happy that after like long period of time of consultation with the European Commission and with the Salto Center in Warsaw, it's Resource Center for Eastern Partnership for cooperation with young youth NGOs, we got in July, at the end of July, the contact partner here in Ukraine for who will work directly with young NGOs, with youth NGOs, in implementing cooperation projects with the countries of European Union and with NGOs of European Union member countries. And other things, it's youth worker and youth centers, because you know that in European Union the question of like organization of activities of young people through youth centers where people can not only gather but organize conference seminars to discuss very important problems like youth unemployment or like getting education, etc. And also youth workers. It's you know about those people who work with young. It's with young people. They are social workers, and we have admit and we learn a lot that in the European Union member countries those topics are very well developed, and we have to learn more and more. During last couple of years, we have achieved some achievements in the field of youth exchanges. For us, it's very important from the point of view that European integration, it's from one side, as I already told, it's the implementation of the association agreement, all these legal things, political, economic things. It's from one side. From the other side, it's communication with people-to-people contact, youth mobility. It is very important, and it's why we work directly with without any exclusion, European Union member country. We have concluded the agreement on these exchanges with Poland and Lithuania, and every year, and I ask you to follow the website of our ministry. Every year we make such like call of proposals. We organize competitions among all the youth NGOs in Ukraine for the projects to get financement from our ministry and from the Polish side and from Lithuanian side to implement the projects. And every year we have like our youth councils from Polish side, Ukrainian side, Lithuanian side, Ukrainian side. We come together, we meet each other, and we establish the priority topics for every year for call of proposals. And it's very important because the topics European integration, Euro-Atlantic integration, learning, mutual learning of cultures, education, combating unemployment, those topics are extremely important for all countries, and especially for our country and for European Union member countries. And that's why this year we have already selected projects for Polish and Ukrainian Council and for Lithuanian and Ukrainian Council. And now these projects are being implemented, and at the end of November, the beginning of December, the NGOs will report to us about their achievements and results. This year, during the visit of the Prime Minister, Mr. Groisman, to Croatia, we have included an agreement on youth cooperation with Croatia. And our next step would like to get youth exchange council with Croatia. For us, it's also very important European Union member country, and we work on this agreement. Last year, we have concluded agreement on youth cooperation with Bulgaria, and we work with Bulgaria on youth exchanges, and with many other countries. For us, cooperation with young people of many countries, it plays also very important cultural and educational role, because as you know, that many young leaders, they are also successful students, and for us it's very important to support such people. And when we talk about the cooperation, not only with the European Union, I would like to point out 2 countries with which we have cooperation in the field of youth, and it's also like a very important example of importance of youth cooperation at the international level. You know that last year there was a state visit of the President of Ukraine, Mr. Poroshenko, to Japan. And we have concluded with Japan an agreement in the field of cooperation, youth, sports, and physical culture. And on implementation of this agreement, Japanese side invited, for the first time in the history of independent Ukraine, invited young people to participate in the international project Ship of Young Leaders. And the financing was provided completely, 100% by Japanese side. And for the first time, Ukraine represented not only itself like a country, but also the whole Europe, participated in this big project. This project started in January this year and lasted till beginning of March this year. And actually, with this project, we have started the Year of Japan in Ukraine, and we have organized a competition, a transparent competition across the whole Ukraine, and we selected young people to participate in this project. And for us it was a great pleasure when Japanese side told us that our Ukrainian young people were the best. I don't afraid of saying these words, were the best, representing culture, language, cuisine, dances, traditions. Also, there were lots of political discussions, etc. And for us, such cooperation plays extremely important role. As you know, that Japan supports a lot Ukraine, and this dimension of such cooperation we pay lots of attention. Another thing, we have talked today during the day and discussions about the Eastern Partnership. For us, Eastern Partnership, as for the ministry and in general for the government in the field of cooperation with youth cooperation, I would say plays extremely important role. You know that this year Ukraine delegation participated in the Eastern Partnership Youth Forum, which was held in Warsaw, in Poland. And frankly speaking, we would like that next Eastern Partnership Youth Forum could take place in Ukraine in 2019. We work now in this direction. It's not very simple because, you know, such forums must take place in a European Union member country. We are not yet, but I hope that we will be, and I'm sure, I believe in it, that we'll be a member of the European Union. But we now work on this, that in 2 years we could have here this youth forum summit of Eastern Partnership here in Ukraine. And one more thing I would like to point out, that we also use in the ministry I would say horizontal cooperation in the field of youth policy. You know that 2 years ago we have concluded an agreement between Visegrad Group countries and Eastern Partnership countries on youth cooperation. And we have thought that this format is working, and there are youth exchanges, the cooperation between youth NGOs is becoming stronger and stronger. But we have thought that we could also find out one more format for such cooperation, which could bring horizontal cooperation inside Eastern Partnership member countries. I mean Ukraine, Georgia, Azerbaijan, for example, Moldova. And we have created at the end of last year the new institution inside Guam, this organization, and the all Guam member countries, they are member of the EU initiative Eastern Partnership, and we have created a special institution on cooperation in the field of youth and sport. And our goal is to rebirth, to give, to organize like Guam Youth Forum, which between our 4 countries, and in such things, in such cooperation, to make stronger horizontal ties between our countries, and also not to, I would say, to bring such cooperation, I would say in such words, that such cooperation will help also to in many youth important issues, to organize our internal position between Eastern Partnership member countries. And we have voiced this our plans also in the European Commission, and we got support that it's also one of the priorities of the European Commission, that the cooperation must be not only between EU Eastern Partnership member countries and EU member countries, but inside Eastern Partnership initiative as well. So that's it, and I'm open to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mykola, also for bringing in an issue which is, I hope, specifically of interest for the youngest of us. And those of them who are looking forward to 2 o'clock to run away from here will probably stay to ask you some questions. And now I'm passing the floor to Andriy Nadjos, who is the Deputy Head of the Department of European Union and NATO at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
Thank you, dear colleagues, for the opportunity to share some general views how the MFA anticipates the EU, what we expect, and what we should do in order to have and in order to create the Ukrainian success story. We don't have any ambitions, as far as I understand, to find a solution of many challenges Ukraine is facing at this particular moment during our session, but I just would like to remind you that the revolution of dignity started in 2013 when the former president of Ukraine rejected in Vilnius to sign the association agreement. And it provoked the tremendous challenges that our country is going through, and it definitely opened the new page of the newest history, not only for Ukraine, but for the whole continent. So let me ask myself how we can see the EU as interstate community where 500 million of habitants live, and the total GDP of which is approximately 16 billion of euro. First of all, for Ukraine, we see this EU as a very good opportunity to open this market for Ukrainian producers, and the association agreement, which entered into the force on September 1st of this year, when the new education season started, it coincides. So for us, it's absolutely new opportunities to find the new contacts and to find the new market. We see also the EU as a big trade partner for Ukraine, and let me just show some figures, because the provisional application of the DCFTA, you know what does it mean? It means that we have some provisions in the association agreement which is related to the economic area, deep and comprehensive free trade area. So, and in accordance with the statistic in 2016, last year, more than 40% of the Ukrainian trade was about on the EU market. So it means we have increased the trade between Ukraine and the EU up to 30%. At the same time, when we lost the Russian market after the Russian military aggression committed against Ukraine, so in 2016, last year, less than 25% of Ukrainian exports were exported to the Russian market. It means that situation is changing absolutely and dramatically. We also see the EU as international actor that should be more involved in settlement in the conflict in certain areas of Lugansk and Donetsk and temporarily occupied Crimea. We rely upon the position, very tough position of the EU, because as far as you know, EU imposed the sanctions, a couple of packages of the sanctions, and condemned the Russian military aggression committed against Ukraine. And by the way, it's also brutal violation of the statutory obligations of Russia inside of the different international organizations. First of all, and primarily in the Council of Europe. So, and therefore we see the EU as a big partner for us. And finally, of course, we see the EU as a big friend for Ukraine, who supports us on the path of the implementation of internal reforms. And I have to admit that with the firm support from the EU, we already achieved unprecedented progress in the fields of decentralization, anti-corruption, judiciary, police, public administration reform, public finance management and procurement, trade, energy, banking system, and healthcare. However, as always, for some it seems too much. For others, it's not enough. And for one, as my neighbor Janos mentioned, the glass is half full, and for other is half empty. But I think that we don't have at this moment any other options but to stay firmly on the path of European integration. And what we had on the daily basis from our partners from Brussels and from different EU capitals, that guys, you have to do, especially at this moment, internal reforms, to do your homework. Please, not to raise the issue about European aspirations or the future membership of Ukraine into the EU. The time will come for this moment when we will raise, and probably it will be you, in your hands, to raise the question about the full-fledged membership of Ukraine in the EU. But for us, what we have to do at this moment is to make the tiny steps, but every day in the right direction of the European integration. That's how we see this topic from the hill of Mikhailivska Square. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andriy, for keeping within the time limit. And you have a question, right? Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Olesa Krivetsky, PhD candidate here at the Institute and trade lawyer by practice. And my question is, how does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs assess Brexit? Is it a feasible reality? And how will it affect our European integration policy? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We see Brexit as a good opportunity for us, proceeding from the EU point of view, to finally sign the agreement about the aviation area. Because unfortunately, till this period of time, this moment, we know, and you probably know, that Spain and Great Britain blocked the negotiation about this topic. And after the Brexit, we hope that this process will be unblocked and we finally have the open sky agreement with the EU and low costs in view of the visa-free regime among Ukraine and the EU. Low cost will start its duty in Ukraine, and we will have a new flights, and our citizens will have the good opportunity to buy the cheaper airplanes ticket in order to travel throughout the Europe. But otherwise, it's up to EU. We are not in the club. We are not yet the member of the club. Therefore, unfortunately, yes, we admitted the results of the referendum conducted in the United Kingdom, but it's up to the EU. So we have a lot to do, what to do in our country.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's try to finish with the speeches till 2 o'clock, and I'm passing the floor to Dr. Alexander Shnirkov, who is heading the chair of World Economy at the Institute of International Relations. You're welcome.
Prepared my report in Ukrainian language, but I would like to use English to cut it short, and only I would like to say a few words about the economic aspects. As I see from the list of the participants, I'm the only one economist in this conference. So the main idea of the association agreement from the economic point of view is to bring Ukraine into the internal market of the European Union without membership in the Ukraine. This is the main idea and the main task from the economic point of view. You are speaking about the economic issues. So this is option which does exist for the other some European countries. Norway, Ireland, the Balkanian cities, Switzerland. So they are not the membership of the European Union, but they are the part of the internal economic market of the European Union. This is the main idea of this association agreement. The second point is how can we increase the positive effects of the this economic part of the association agreement. Before signing this agreement, we got two main options. What will be the form of the economic part of association agreement? Because association agreement, European Union has, for example, with Mexico, for example, or some Latin American countries, or some Asian countries. But it is not the association agreement with European countries. It's another kind of story. So we got two options. The first one option, it was a simple, classic free trade zone. You were speaking about the doing away with the tariffs, with the customs situations, and decreasing or eliminating the duties. But we got at least four economic researchers, where we calculated that it will bring no positive effect to Ukrainian economy. It is not our cup of tea. It will eliminate only tariff barriers. Ukrainian economy will be better off. We will not get positive effects. So the second option was that we should sign deep and comprehensive free trade zone. The main idea of a comprehensive and deep free trade zone is that we have to adapt practically all our economic policies to the European ones. This is a long story, you know, that we have to implement a lot of directives and so on. But the main idea of adopting to the European economic policies is that we're becoming the part of the internal market of the European Union without being a member of this society. What is the main idea and what is the world tendency? You were speaking about the free trade agreements. The main idea on the beginning of the 21st century is that all countries are trying to sign not simple classic free trade agreements, but comprehensive indeed. Why? What is the reason? Why they were not ready to sign this kind of free trade agreement 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and they're trying to sign this kind of agreement right now? Because one of the main problems of the division of labor in the world economy is that all countries would like to join global regional production networks. What does it mean? We have to if we would like to be successful, we have to outsource the main production we would like to produce in our country or in other countries. For example, China is using only 40% of Chinese components for computers, iPhones, cars, and something like that. Only 40%. The rest of these components, parts, China is importing from the world, from Taiwan, from Malaysia, and so on and so forth. The main idea of this deep and comprehensive free trade zone for Ukraine is to be integrated in these regional and world production networks. If we do not succeed in this process, the positive effect of this free trade agreement will be very low. The only one chance of Ukrainian economy is to be integrated in these regional European networks, value-added chains, it is called in economic literature, value-added chains. And we would like to be integrated into the middle of this world value-added chains. Not at the beginning of this chain when we are exporting a raw material, for example, grain, iron, or I don't know, oil, gas, something like that, or to be integrated into these chains at the end of this chain when we are importing Volkswagen, for example, or just Mitsubishi. This is not an option for Ukrainian economy. We should be presented in the middle of the chains. What is the main story, one of the reasons of the successful story of joining Central and European countries? I mean, Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and so on. Reforms, legal reform, fight with corruption, something like that. But the main idea is that the bulk of the enterprises in these countries, they have been integrated into the European and global network. This is the main idea. So if you are integrated, you're welcome. We have the last research made by UNCTAD. It is said that the great economic rate growth of those countries which are integrated in the global and regional production networks and system is 5 times higher than those countries which are not integrated. 5 times higher. So if Ukrainian enterprises are integrated, we will face a high enough level of economic growth. If not, so unfortunately we will face some trouble. So what are the main barriers? We were speaking about the process of integrating Ukrainian enterprises into the European networks. At least a lot of barriers, a lot of. But for example, the first one is the legal reform. Unfortunately, nobody would like to invest into the country where your rights are not guaranteed by law. It's obvious, we know. The second one is, we were speaking about corruption. Well, the situation is not so good as you know in Ukraine, but we know a lot of stories in other countries, in China for example, when the level of corruption is high enough. And it is not the main barrier for foreign investors to invest into this economy. So this is the option for Ukraine, this is the problem, this is a barrier, but it's not the principal one, I should say. I would like to mention that, for example, the United States and the European Union have been foreseen the special chapter on fight with corruption in the agreement, which is not now on the table between the United States and European Union. I mean the transatlantic partnership, investment and trade partnership. But they foresee a special chapter on fighting corruption. Not in Ukrainian association agreement between European Union and Ukraine, but in the relationship between the United States and the European Union. So what is the third problem for Ukraine? The third problem is, we were speaking about the regional production systems network and value-added chains. A lot of notions we can add to this problem. So the third one is that now Ukraine is facing the process of being extracted from, Ukrainian enterprises have been extracted from the regional production networks with Russian enterprises. And these Ukrainian enterprises have not been involved in any others in Europe or worldwide. So we can conclude that association agreement did not compensate the loss of Russian market for Ukrainian enterprises. So our enterprises are outside of the regional networks with Russian enterprises, because, you know, Russia is conducting a hybrid, it is called economic war. More than 45 economic wars on behalf of Russia against Ukraine since 2004 statistic. 45 economic wars, and now we're surviving this hybrid economic war on behalf. But nevertheless, what Ukrainian PITPREM should do in this situation, what are the options for them? They should be the part of other networking. But which one? European. Europe is not ready. Why foreign investors are not investing in Ukraine? Why even they shouldn't risk, because Ukraine has a lot of problems, why they are not integrating Ukrainian enterprises without foreign direct investment? Because we have economic war and problems with Russia. No investor or no center of such a global networking will be interested in taking Ukrainian enterprises where he or she can face in future economic problems just because of disrupting the economic contacts, supplies, exports, something like that. What does it mean? So if Ukraine is not involved at the time of the being into this industrial networks, it means that we, for the time being, are concentrating, this is the first option, on the raw material when we are supplying. It means that Ukrainian economy, unfortunately, is under the process of this industrialization. So the main part of the Ukrainian export is concentrating on the agriculture and raw material, unfortunately. The second option is that foreign investors and foreign partners are taking care of creating partners or establishing enterprises in the western part of Ukraine, not in the eastern and southern, because of the high level of risk, possible risk because of the possible invasion of Russian troops, for example, just military action, something like that. The second option is that foreign investors, or if they are seeking a special cooperation with Ukrainian firms without own investment, they wouldn't be very active in creating creating contacts and these kind of networks in long run, because they are not sure what will be in Ukraine in 1 year or in 2 years. It means that the main spheres, main branches of cooperation will be concentrated on the types of production where you can get profit in 1 year at least. Half a year it's better, 1 year it's enough. No one will be trying to play in long run because of the existing risk. The third option is that the foreign investors would like to invest into Ukrainian some branches where they are not connected geographically to some Ukrainian enterprises. I mean, it means the digital market. You were speaking about the computer programs, you were speaking of digital markets, which is not, as usual, connected to geographical points of Ukraine, so you're welcome. So probably some foreign parties would like to outsource some services, some production to Ukraine, but for the enterprises which are not connected, to the geographical points in Ukraine, to Dnieper, to Zaporizhzhia, for example, to Odessa, something like that. Or when it is very easily to relocate the allocation of this production. And the last option is that in this case, Ukraine should concentrate its effort, I mean, from this point of view, on providing security on our eastern borders. The providing security in our eastern borders, it's the factor of integrating Ukrainian into European and global production networks. If we are not successful in providing peace in eastern part of Ukraine and Donbass, well, the effects of the association agreement will be not so visible, will be not so positive as we would like to see. So we have to decide this problem. This will be the sign and a signal to our investors, to Ukrainian investors for sure, to foreign investors, to take our enterprises into the internal, regional, and world market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I would say that we are really lucky to have such an economist on the panel. And finally, I'm passing the floor to our last but a very important speaker who is Dr. Vania Smirnova, an associate professor at the chair of Comparative and European Law of the Institute of International Relations.
Thank you very much. I'm not a chief, but I'm associate professor in this chair, and mainly I would speak I want to focus my attention on legal aspect because, if I'm not mistaken, I'm the only lawyer here, and I just will focus on this legal aspect of EU-Ukraine relations, and especially on implementation. As Alexander said, from an economical point of view, I will focus on legal aspect. And mainly, I just want to say that we have a challenge to implement this association agreement, and European Union as well has a challenge to sign and to enforce this association agreement. Why? Because if we compare such agreements that were concluded all over the world since the middle of 60s, so the EU has a huge history of concluding of such kind of agreements, we can say that our agreement, I mean Ukrainian agreement, is a special one. It's not the same as it was concluded with Turkey. It's not the same as was concluded with Albania, for example, or with former candidates and new member states of EU, I mean Central and Eastern European countries. We cannot compare this agreement with other agreements. Why? Because it's deeper. It's much more deeper in comparison with other agreements. Of course, the most challengeable aspect and element of this agreement, this is DCFTA that we have mentioned. This is deep and comprehensive free trade area as the core element of this agreement, because every politics, every relations in the country, they can be started only with the economy. So DCFTA as a platform for further development of the relations. So I would speak about this from legal point of view. We can say about some peculiarities of this DCFTA, because with other countries there is no DCFTA. We can compare it only with Moldova and Georgia that are mainly the same generation of agreement that were concluded by the EU. Of course, we can compare this FTA with, for example, South Korea, with Chile and other countries on the intensive or quantitative and qualitative aspects of the economic integration. But from legal point of view, we cannot compare it because our agreement and our DCFTA can be surrounded by other elements on the fully implementation of other spheres, not only that related to trade. I mean, for example, statistic, custom, tax sphere, and other aspects. So it flows to the first peculiarity, comprehensiveness of this DCFTA that covers not only trade aspects and trade in goods, but moreover in the perspective it would be cover services as well, and it will be covered by investment and freedom of capital in the future perspective. Of course, we cannot say it from the current situation, but this DCFTA can preclude to the future the next stages of economic integration. This is the second peculiarity, conditionality of DCFTA and the whole AA agreement. I mean, if we can do something the first day, for example, so we can move to another step. This is the main core conditionality principle. So we can be obliged on the additional obligation only after the fulfillment of the preliminary obligations. So this integration should be done only step by step. This is the core element, conditionality. Of course, we can say about the implementation mechanism of DCFTA. And this is, and I will focus on some 5 perspectives, I think so, gaps and perspectives that should be done by both countries, by both parties, and especially by Ukraine. First of all, we should speak about internal Ukrainian institutional and legal mechanism of implementation. We can say that the former and the law that was adopted in 2004, it's too old for us now. Firstly, we're speaking about the special law that should be adopted by the Parliament. And by the way, it was my question, but I didn't ask Maria about this question, about this framework law on the implementation of AA. Because the previous law on the state program of adaptation, Ukrainian legislation to acquis, it's really too old. We need this framework law with the aim to coordinate different institutions to have a common path on European integration. The second, we should mention that procedural aspect should be settled. Procedural aspect, and there are some different options of it. First of all, parliamentary procedures. When we can compare it from legal point of view in different countries, for example, as in Poland, when Poland had the association agreement, they initiated the special procedure in the parliament that all these bills and laws that are aimed on European integration, they were passed on this separate procedure. Here we can say that a lot of bills, a lot of drafts that were elaborated by ministries, by civil society, by experts, but they were lying in Verkhovna Rada, so we cannot do anything in these procedural norms. From this point of view, we can focus on another question. Of course, we have the list of these 100 documents and legal acts, regulations, and directives that should be implemented by Ukraine. But from another point of view, we can say that EU is a very dynamic legal system. And this text of the agreement that was elaborated in 2011, imagine that 6 years passed and the text of this agreement didn't change. Because from legal point of view, the text was initialized in 2011. So we're speaking about new legal acts that should be implemented due to the evolutionary dynamic development of the EU, I mean acquis. So we're speaking about amendments, and we're speaking about the so-called refreshing of annexes and amendments to the association agreement. This issue is not settled yet by the Parliament and by the government, but I hope there will be political will on justifying the council decision, I mean association council decision in Ukrainian legal system. And next option, next challenge, next gap and perspective. Of course, we should speak about coordinated mechanism within the ministries, between the government and parliament, and we heard it from Maria's speech that such instrument should be launched due to the fully implementation of all these obligations under AA. And the last one. Today we have heard about Eastern Partnership and the preliminary draft staff work document on the Eastern Partnership policy and their perspective. We should remember that in Eastern Partnership communication, there is a very interesting notion, and we should remember about it, the possible creation of network of DCFTAs between Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, and other countries between their FTAs in the separate network of FTA. And this is another perspective. Of course, we cannot say about this newly perspective, we cannot say that it will be tomorrow, but in the nearest future, it would be the next step on European economic integration of Ukraine, on combining different FTAs into special institutional mechanism. And it will be the next step on combining their markets with the market of EU, I mean internal market of the EU. Of course, we should stress and remember about the institutional support. I mean, now the flow is to our youth population, because we just focus our attention on preparation of new experts and new young generation of experts on EU implementation and EU law in general, because unfortunately even now when we can hear a lot of information about the EU, there are not so many experts, deep experts in EU law. And I think that Parliament, government, ministries and other institutions, they must have deep experts in EU law if we're speaking about further European economic integration. Of course, I can say another, I can continue, but I know about the time limits, and if you have some questions, so with pleasure I will answer you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ksenia, for a superb analysis, and now we really have time for questions from anyone to anybody, and those of you who survived are welcome to join the discussion. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with Dr. Smirnova that it's time to raise new generation of experts, not only in EU but in trade law. Yes, and this is the problem that UK government, I guess, is facing after this Brexit topic, because they need staff in trade law. So this is an evolutionary process, and actually our institute have 2 master programs that is trying to cover all these topics that are very important. As for an example, for comparison of the FTAs, I would also mention the EU-Singapore FTA. The CFTA that legally is a very interesting document, and its future is under question now after the ECJ's decision. So it may change somehow the trade deals of EU, and now we are in better position because we have overcome already all these ratification stages and so on. So now we are working on the implementation. That is very hard, but at least we have what to focus on. And referring to the Professor Shnirkov's speech, as for the economic barriers, I would also add the trade remedy barriers, the anti-dumping measures, which are absolutely legitimate instruments that EU has been applying, especially in order to protect its steel industry. It is legitimate provided that the investigation is conducted, and what is important for us, because Ukrainian steel industry is targeted by these measures, despite of the CFTA. Why? Because our free trade agreement, Chapter 4, does not liberalize this very sector. So EU does not did not exempt Ukrainian products from trade remedies measures, and it's okay. Actually, few countries do so. I think it's only Mercosur countries that have such a step to the liberalizing effect. And my message is that actually we have currently 2 anti-dumping proceedings as for Ukrainian products in the EU. These are review on hot-rolled steel products and anti-dumping investigation on ferrosilage iron. And also we know that EU is going to to adopt the definitive anti-dumping duties against Ukrainian tubes and pipes. So this is the big deal, actually, for the industries that has a very important share in Ukraine's export, and in particular to the EU's market. And here I would come back to Brexit again, because this is an opportunity for Ukrainian producers and exporters to initiate reviews when Brexit actually comes to, is realized. So in order to review anti-dumping review, because Ukraine is the main source of the semi-finished products from export of semi-finished product to UK market. So if UK is exempted from the customs union of EU, then we will need to recalculate all the normal value, import volume, dumping margin. And this is the very specific example where actually FTA does not liberalize our position, our trade, but where we should work on. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Bernadette Kaller. I'm representing the Hungarian embassy here in Ukraine, and thank you very much for organizing this important and timely forum. And I'm really glad that so many young students are attending this event. Let me just acknowledge two very important events which has happened recently. With those Ukraine certainly arrived to benchmarks in the approximation in the European Union integration process. One is the visa liberalization process, when just recently the visa-free regime has been provided for Ukraine, and also the entering into force of the association agreement just recently on 1st of September, which we very much welcome and which my government was a very strong supporter of. It is nice to acknowledge all these achievements, but I believe that the hardest phase of the road is still ahead of Ukraine, namely the implementation of the association agreement. And let me here refer to the presentation of Madam Associate Professor, which I found very important and very interesting, talking about the process of adopting laws, the parliamentary processes, where we feel that some improvement needs to be done with regard of the preparation of legal instruments, of laws. Also with the necessity to improve the preliminary consultation process which precedes the adoption of laws. And we would call, unfortunately, the Madam Deputy Chairman of the committee has already left, but I still see that representatives of the ministries, line ministries are here, Mr. Deputy Minister and Director on the part of the Foreign Ministry. And may I address them to pay more attention to the process of adopting laws, so that these kind of regretful events would not happen. That just recently the education law was adopted, which is on one part is a very important piece of legislation which helps the process of European integration and takes forward the reforms. On the other hand, unfortunately contradicts some of the European norms and legislations, and in this sense it would be very important to improve these processes which precede the legislation processes, also provide opportunity for all stakeholders to take part in the preparation of laws and legal instruments. And I still have one more remark. I would like to reflect to the intervention of Mr. Deputy Minister and call the attention of the students of, I think, a very important Hungarian initiative is the Stipendium Hungaricum program, which provides scholarships to Ukrainian students who are very welcome to come to Hungary to study, and this way maybe to get more knowledge of these European legal procedures and which Hungary is ready to pass on to Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and you, among other things, raised, I suspect, a very hot issue, and I guess Andrei is about to reflect.
Yes, thank you so much for remarks about the path of Ukraine on the European integration, and for some recommendations provided to the ministers. And let me briefly react to your comments about the law on education that was successfully passed by the Ukrainian parliament and which is under the consideration by the president. Because president, in accordance with our law, the president has to write this law. And as far as we know, yesterday the prime minister, he ordered the Minister of Foreign Affairs, MFA, and the Minister of Education to conduct the briefing for the ambassadors in Kyiv, and we anticipated till the end of this week this briefing will be conducted, and you will be definitely invited to the briefing in order to have all the detailed explanations and developments around this law. And also I would like to mention, I just forgot to mention the Eastern Partnership. It's really important, and we have, when we're talking about the European integration, we have to understand the final task, the final aim. You know, for us, especially at this moment when we are suffering from the Russian military aggression, we expect that EU sooner or later, after we will implement everything and will do all our homework, we will get a chance to see in the statement or in this joint declaration the European acknowledgement of the European aspirations, or at least the quotation of the article number 49 from the Lisbon Treaty. And you know that in this year the summit, Eastern Partnership Summit, will be conducted in November, and we are trying to invest or to produce some joint position from Georgia, from Ukraine, and from Moldova, from 3 Eastern Partnership countries, which successfully ratified and signed and in the stage of implementation of the association agreement. And we really would like to ask the EU maybe to see in the final declaration of the Eastern Partnership Summit some references related to the Ukrainian European aspirations for the associated partners, or maybe the quotation of the Rome Declaration adopted by the EU, if I'm not mistaken, in July of this year, about the door open for everyone who corresponds to the requirements and who respect the European values. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. I'll give the floor to the students. Okay, go ahead.
We all know, widely known fact, that our Ukrainian schools have lower qualities than
guess this is the question for the only economist in the room. So,
This is a question for me. Well, there is a risk. I have told already, if we got two options. Either it's a classical, simple free trade agreement where we are eliminating customs duties, for example. It will bring negative effects on behalf of for Ukraine. Unfortunately, you are right, absolutely. But if we are speaking about the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, so Ukrainian enterprises have potential, have good chances to penetrate European market. So in this case, it's a main law of the International Division of Labor. We have to get rid of the goods where we have no comparative advantage. It's simple. And we have to produce goods where we have comparative advantage. It's very simple. Yes, oh, well, we have two main, yeah, you're right, absolutely. We have two main mechanisms. Either this is a market mechanism, prices, and the second mechanism, you're right, it's policy of government. What are the branches where you would like to support your enterprises? Is it a steel production? Is it a car production? Is it a computer production? Or computer program, for example? This is up to government to decide. You're absolutely right. If we're relying only upon the market mechanism, so I think that neither the European Union, nor the United States, nor China, they are not relying for the time being only on the market mechanism. We have to provide effective economic policy towards this main production. You're absolutely right. The question is where, how, with what instruments, and so on. This is a big question. But for example, if I'm speaking about the car industry of Ukraine, I am not sure that we have to support Zaporozhye Автомобильный завод. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But the owners of the Zaporozhye Автомобильный завод, they are absolutely sure that they have to preserve this enterprise because they are producing Lanas, which is the best car in the world. They're absolutely sure for the dumping. And they can compete absolutely on the equal level with the European, Japanese, American cars. How can we just to agree with our point of view? This is either it's market, but if I speak in car industry, Ukrainian government, for example, indeed was very open to support Ukrainian car industry. Starting from 1997 up to 2007, before Ukraine became a member of the WTO, we got for 1,000 unique governmental program for supporting the car industry in Ukraine. 12 tax reduction, 12 main instruments which was supposed to protect Ukrainian industry. But now we have 2017. Can we make a conclusion that Ukrainian car production is competitive on the market in Ukraine with American, with German and Japanese, for example? I'm not sure. So if we're relying only upon the market, these Ukrainian enterprises should go bankruptcy, absolutely. If we would like to support this, but we can support it to some extent, and only within a certain period of time. Due to the WTO rules, we can to support them 4 + 4, only for 8 years. Then we have to get rid. Either you can swim in this sea by your own, or you please stay ashore and do not penetrate in the process of swimming by other firms, for example. This is a very complicated issue, by the way. Where should government concentrate its interest? It's very complicated.
Are the reactions to the same issue, right?
The same question, very short. A lady went to a doctor and said, I can't sleep, I'm turning around and around at night. And the doctor said, don't, stop turning around, sleep. Increase quality. That's it.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Sorry, I'm the second economist in this area. Yeah. Okay.
Not in the list of the report.
Yes, definitely. I'm a professor of Kyiv National University of Economics, Department of International Economics, Oleg Shvedenenko. I would like to outline one key issue according to the question, concerning the question the young man asked us. First of all, we have to differentiate two things, quality and competitiveness. A good example of China, they're making different products with different quality, but very competitive one. That is why I think this is not a problem. I completely agree with Professor Smirnova that we have concentrate on supporting some key industries. This is a normal practice for all of the countries to make some support, but according to the rules of WTO. That's it. Don't worry, you have to try. I completely agree with Janusz that not only increase in quality, but try to do something, try to go to the market, try to sell. But anyway, we have to create some supporting mechanism to help our producers to enter this market. Paper things and other, very simple one. They don't know how to do this. They don't know how to export. They don't know how to promote, and that's it. Simple things, simple mechanism. This is not, but I'm talking now about the small and medium enterprises. For the big one, for the big industries, of course, supported by government. And it's also very important, we talked with Professor Smirnova about different issues, to get the concrete sign from European Union that they could protect some foreign direct investment in Ukraine. I think it will be very good for all of us because it will bring some capital to Ukraine by the protection of EU. We are protecting, we are helping. Please develop this market. I think we will benefit, all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think we are going to take one or two last questions to finish the discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like to make two comments. One on Brexit. First of all, the Article 50 of European Treaty hasn't been used, never. And now there are a lot of bargaining and another stuff going on. And it is about 100% that UK will remain in internal market. So it won't create any additional possibilities for Ukraine in these terms. Only problem which is very discussed at the moment in Brussels also, it is about labor movement. Because it is a problem why Brexit appears, there is a lot of problems with the new members of the European Union. For example, labor free movement was postponed for 3 years after accession to the European Union. Then for Croatia it was postponed for 2 years after accession to the European Union. And it is the only problem within this internal market. So I don't think that it will somehow concern the goods and services. And also about the question about European goods, don't forget that in agreement about association states, there is a statement that countries have a right to impose customs in the order when they agreement that it is of reported interest of national economy. So it's not a big issue also. Thank you.
Let me say, I do not agree fully with you, because, for example, I was speaking about the Brexit. The United Kingdom, which is the last position and suggestion on behalf of the United Kingdom, that Great Britain will remain as a member of the temporary customs union of the European Union for 2, 3, 5, 4 years. In this case, for 2, 1, 3 years, nothing will be changed as regarding the Ukrainian production. But what will be when this situation will change? So there are 11 options on the Brexit, 11 options. Where will be the economy of the Great Britain? So free trade agreement, customs union, branch integration, sectoral integration, and so on. You can just take this publication in the internet, 11 options. And the situation for Ukraine will be influenced by the last solution which will be made by the European Union and Great Britain. And we have to see where is Great Britain? It is a part of the customs union, or is it a Swiss model? Is it a Norway model? Is it the Balkan city model? Is it child model? And so on, something like that. And we will decide, I mean, Ukrainian part, what are our actions? What should we do to protect our exporters in the European Union and in the internal market of the United Kingdom? It will depend upon the final solution on the Brexit. It is not on the table for the time being. You know, there are discussions. So nothing can be taken into account for the time being. We have to see what will be the solution. And we have to prepare, we have to discuss, yes. But nothing can be decided by Ukrainian part for the time being. We don't know the solution.
And I would just, a short comment. Actually, I have participated in some conferences on trade law, including the annual conference on WTO held in Geneva at the WTO and Graduate Institute of Geneva. And you know the two main topics that are like a red line during 2 days of the conference are Brexit and Trump.
On this optimistic note, I would like to thank everyone for a very good discussion, which quality is certified by a number of students still sitting here. So you're welcome to communicate to each other after we end, actually. Thanks for coming, and you're welcome to join us in the future.